Today, we're going to look at a special technique for factorizing expressions called the difference of two squares. Now, this technique only works for a particular type of expression where you have one thing squared minus a second thing squared. In other words, a squared minus b squared, where a and b can be any letters or numbers depending on the example or exercise. So, in order to use this technique, what you want to do is first, you need to figure out the two things that are being squared, which in our case are a and b. Now, once you found them, you then need to stick them into two brackets, one where they're added together and the other one where they're subtracted by each other. Okay? So one where they're added together, the other one where they're subtracted. Let's use an example to showcase this. So the first expression is x squared minus 16. So if we take the first term, x squared, it's quite easy to see that x is being squared here. Okay? But what we're really doing here is we're doing the square root of x squared in order to find this x. Now, if we look at 16, we need to do the same thing. In order to find out which number is being squared, although we might be able to see it's 4, what we need to do is we need to do the square root of that term, which in this case is square root of 16, which we know is 4. Okay. Now that we've found the two numbers that are being squared, x and 4, we need to stick them into two sets of brackets, one where they're added together, the other one where they're subtracted. So this would be x plus 4, the one where they're added, and then the other bracket where they're subtracted, x minus 4. And that's simply how you factorize that expression. Let's look at the other expression, 64 minus b squared. Again here, we take the square root of the first term, square root of 64, which is 8, and then we do the same for the second term, b squared. So we do the square root of b squared, which is just b. So now that we found them, we first put them in brackets added, 8 plus b, and the other bracket where they're subtracted, 8 minus b. And there we have it. Now let's do these two that are a bit more complicated. So the first expression reads 9x squared minus 16y squared. Okay. So the square root of the first expression is simply 3x. And this is because we're doing the square root of 9 times the square root of x squared. Now the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of x squared is x. And this gives us 3x. For the second term, we're doing the square root of 16 times the square root of y squared. So we know that the square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of y squared is y. Okay, so now we have both terms that we need. So again, in the first bracket, we add them together, and in the second bracket, we subtract them. Excellent. The other expression reads 4p squared minus 36q squared. Again, we do the same. 4p squared, so we square the whole thing. We know the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of p squared is just p. So 2p. And then the square root of the whole thing, so the square root of 36 is 6, and the square root of q squared is q. So again, now that we have both terms, in the first bracket, we add them together, and in the second bracket, we subtract them. Excellent. Now to show you that this technique really works, what we need to do is do the inverse. So basically go from these two brackets to the initial expression. Okay? Now, this involves expanding brackets. So if you're still not familiar with this concept, make sure to go check out my previous videos on this topic, as it will greatly help you. Okay, so what we're doing first is we multiply the first term in the first bracket by each term in the second bracket, and we do the same with the second term of the first bracket. Okay, so 2p times 2p is 4p squared. 2p times minus 6q is minus 12pq. Then 6q times 2p is plus 12pq. And then 6q times minus 6q is minus 36q squared. So as you can see, minus 12pq plus 12pq cancel out. And we're simply left with 4p squared minus 36q squared, which is the original expression that we factorized. Okay? So this is just to show you that this technique really works. And if you've done the factorizing correctly, you should be able to go from the brackets to the initial expression. If you don't get the same result, you made a mistake somewhere along the line. Okay? And to finish, let's do these last two expressions. So we have 25 minus a squared. So again, we do the square root of 25, which is 5. And then the square root of a squared, which is just a. So now we have both terms. In the first brackets, we add them. In the second brackets, we subtract them. Excellent. And then the last expression, c squared minus 16d squared. We do the same. Square root of c squared is equal to c. And then square root of 16d squared. So square root of 16 times the square root of d squared. Square root of 16 is simply 4. And the square root of d squared is d. So 4d. And again, now that we have both terms, first expression, we add them together. C plus 4d. Second brackets, we subtract them. C minus 4d. Excellent. So that's it for today. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them.